This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon. But for me, all I kept acknowledging with that is that she's assuming that it's totally impossible, almost illogical, that he could be so interested in me and so in love with me, enthralled with me, that he wouldn't leave her for me. Right? Like I'm just a non-threat now because I'm transgender, and he would never ever want to value me in the way that he would value her. Hey guys, it's Kat, and it's time for another episode of True Tea. Thank you so much for coming back yet again for another brew of True Tea. We do these videos every week on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I appreciate those of you guys who keep coming back, keep leaving comments, and keep contributing. You guys are really what's keeping me going on here, so thank you so much for doing that for me. Anyway, how have you guys been? What have you guys been up to? I have been going through it. I'll just say, maybe one day we'll talk about it, but I've been going through some things. I guess I will talk about that a bit in this video. But you know, I'm here, I'm alive, you know. I have to like often think to myself that things could always be worse. And sometimes, you know, as we're living through this, it's almost like things continue to get worse. So like that goalpost keeps moving. But honestly, I'm here, I'm able to do this for you guys. So life is still pretty copacetic. So anyway, this is gonna be yet another episode about polyamory. And in this video, we're going to be talking about cis people who are very, very comfortable with their partners dating trans people, but are very uncomfortable with them dating other cis people. So this is going to be a conversation. So, you know, go to your kitchen, grab yourself something to drink. Personally, I am drinking some lemonade out of my SUNY Oneonta cup that I got when I spoke at SUNY Oneonta, which, side note, was one of my favorite places in upstate New York. Girl, we had a lot of fun in SUNY Oneonta. I don't know how to say it. I'm probably saying it wrong, so, you know, correct me if you live here. But had a really good time in that little town. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna take a sip of this and let's have this conversation. So you guys know that I like to talk to you guys about some of the sort of things that I'm still unpacking and stuff that I'm still processing, and the good and the bad and the ugly about my life. True Tea is kind of all about me being honest and always acknowledging that maybe I don't have all the answers for stuff. And this is one of those sort of things where I have a really strong opinion about. And I also know that other people have their opinions. So this is going to truly be one of those episodes where I'm talking to you guys about something and I'm really, really wanting your opinion and perspective. So let's get into it. So like I said, I have been going through it. One of the most recent things that has happened is I broke up with one of my partners. Salvatore and I decided that it's not a good idea for us to continue to see each other. We're still very cordial. We still are on good terms. But it was really hard for me. I'm going through a lot of other stuff right now. And things were not good for me for a bit. You know, but long story short, I did what a lot of people do after you go through a breakup. You jump right back on the dating sites, you know? And so I decided to go on OkCupid. Now, Salvatore, I don't know how this is gonna come off, but Salvatore, he was just like the kind of guy who I felt very physically comfortable around. He's this kind of tall guy who is a little bit of a bigger dude. You know, he's kind of thick or whatever. And he's muscular too. So he's like this nice kind of combination of like muscular and thick. And he's got like a nice beard. And you guys know how I feel about men who can throw me across the room. He's definitely that kind of guy, but he was such a teddy bear. And our relationship was mostly us watching movies and cuddling. And I have, you know, my partners are all great, but most of my partners are not very cuddly. And he was like the person that I cuddled with. And our bodies fit really, 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 really well together. And so low key, when I was on OkCupid, I was kind of looking for that kind of guy. I was kind of looking for a big, tall guy with a nice beard who was a little thick or whatever. Who, you know, was just the kind of open that I require men to be. I kind of am the sort of person who I really do need for my partners to be open-minded and interested in being open. And so I was really excited when I got matched with this particular person. This guy was, sometimes you go to people's profiles and it's just like a long list of their political beliefs and things. He was, BLM, ACAB. He was just like going down the list of all of these like very progressive leftist things. And he was openly pansexual and all this other stuff. And he almost didn't talk a lot about like what he was looking for or, what kind of relationships he was open to. It was mostly him really speaking passionately about his politics. And one of the big things in his profiles was no TERFs, no swerfs. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't always love when somebody's personality begins and ends at them listing off, these sound bites of political ideas. Sometimes I've learned for myself that I do want somebody who's very politically engaged, but I do sometimes find it to be a little performative, especially when it comes to white leftists, which, unfortunately is who I end up dating most of the time. What I mean when I say that is just, there's a lot of people who will do this thing where they will go on and on and on about their politics, and then you look at their life and it doesn't reflect it. And they're on their soapbox, they're preaching at other people, they're making other people feel shitty for what they believe in, but they don't live by the standards at which they have held other people to. And I kind of don't like that. I kind of prefer when people are thoughtful and smart and actively working to be better people, but aren't pretending that they don't also have flaws, which is what a lot of lefty leaning people, unfortunately, have been. Clearly, I don't want to date a person on the right. But I will say that for me, I do sometimes have a mixed reaction when I see stuff like that in somebody's profile, but it's always a mostly positive thing, right? So this guy messages me first, which I kind of require. Y'all know I am a Virgo. One thing I've recognized that I have a problem with on dating sites is that I will give men every single reason not to pursue me really quickly right up front. I do have a hard time, again, like I said in my previous video, with people expressing interest or niceness towards me. That's an issue that I definitely have. It's just trauma materializing in the way that I engage with people. But I do a thing, like when I go and look back at some of my old messages to people, it's like, I seem crazy because I'm just doing like this sort of thing where I'm pushing these men away while they are communicating positive shit to me. But I understand that I do that, but there's also a really big part of me that needs for things to be understood. And unfortunately, when it comes to being a trans woman who has the sort of sexual preferences that I personally have, I really need to make sure that we're on the same page, because just because somebody gets along with me does not mean that we're gonna actually be able to make it work. And let me just spell this out, since, I guess keeping it vague is making this more like harder to understand. I am not a person who will ever want any part of my body to penetrate any part of a man's body. That's just who it is. This is how it is. Like, that's just something I don't do. That's something that I can't do physically, even if I want it to. It's something that mentally doesn't turn me on. And a lot of men who are open to dating or being with trans women, that's what they want, that is what they want. And so sometimes I've been in situations where I get along with someone really, 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 really well, and we're connecting on every level. We get along everything's great, right? And then it comes to the sex part, and they are requiring this thing that I just straight up don't do. I just straight up won't do or ever be interested in doing. You know what I mean? And so for me, it is kind of important, even though I don't want to talk about my sex or genitalia or things like that. I feel like it is important for me to get that right out there. And so I started asking him how he felt about that. I started asking him what his feelings were about it. And it was like all of this stuff came out of what he, at this point, a lot of stuff was revealed, right? So this guy, again, his profile was mostly his political beliefs, mostly no Trump supporters, BLM, ACAB, all this shit, right? What he didn't mention in his profile is that he is partnered. He has 2 children, And he's in more of an open relationship than he is in a polyamorous relationship. He tells me that he's in a relationship with a cis woman. And this relationship is one where he is allowed to date anyone except for cis women. His partner, he said it very clearly to me, his partner is someone who is very uncomfortable with him dating other cis women. She is very, very comfortable with me being a trans person. She's very comfortable with him pursuing even men, you know, like I say, he's pansexual. But she's really, really uncomfortable with him dating other cis women. Now, you guys have to understand, there's a couple of ways where I can go with this, right? On one hand, I understand intellectually how if you're a cis woman, you would feel threatened by him dating another cis woman. You know, there have been moments in my life where partners of mine have wanted to date other trans women, and I have had that weird like reaction of like, what do you, why kind of thing. But at the same time, what you recognize, at least what I recognize with time, is that, listen, I just told y'all that I don't want to do certain things. There are other trans women who don't feel that way at all whatsoever. And maybe that guy can get something from that trans girl that he's not gonna be able to get from me. We're two different people. We provide two different experiences. And when you're polyamorous, that's kind of a thing that you acknowledge, you know, that you are not going to be his end all be all, that there are going to be other types of relationships that exist, you know, outside of what you're doing with him that are just as important and just as valid, right? And for me, when I heard, you know, here's the thing. I understand how on paper it sounds really positive that like he's dating a cis woman who's allowing him to date trans women, right? But all I kept hearing, I mean, her insecurity about him dating a cis woman, for me at least, comes off as not really wanting to be polyamorous, you know? The fear, of course, with a lot of cis women, you know, who are poly, who are, you know, in situations like this, is if he meets a cis woman, that cis woman could feasibly take him away from me, right? That cis woman could feasibly be just as amazing as I am, and therefore, you know, there's a risk of, you know, her taking him away, right? Which, if you have that fear, I don't know why you're being polyamorous in the first place, right? But for me, all I kept acknowledging with that is that she's assuming that it's totally impossible, almost illogical, that he could be so interested in me and so in love with me, enthralled with me, that he wouldn't leave her for me, right? Like, I'm just a non-threat now because I'm transgender, and he would never ever want to value me in the way that he would value her. That's what I was getting. And I'm positive that for a lot of men, that's probably the case. A lot of men do sort of have this thing where they want to have sex with trans women. They don't really want to date them long term. So maybe that's true for some people, but this is like an openly pansexual guy who doesn't have as many qualms about that, who is being actively limited based, you know, on who he can pursue by his partner, who is a cis woman. It just seems like insecurity, right? It just seems like, you know, insecurity and also this feeling of supremacy, right? And so I'm sitting over here, and here's this guy who, again, had no turfs, no swerves, all this other shit in his profile, and he's dating somebody who is essentially communicating to him that trans women are not a threat to her. How, for me at least, how does that not seem transphobic? I don't understand how that isn't transphobic. I don't get how that's not transphobic. Now, of course, I get, you know, we see a similar sort of thing with straight men who are in relationships with usually bisexual women, right? We've talked about this before, but it's really common for a man who's in a relationship with a bi woman specifically to only be comfortable with her pursuing women and even in that context, barely comfortable with her having like real relationships that are loving that don't include him in their pursuit, right? It's really common for that. And the thought of another man is just like a no-go. It's like, why would you need a man? I'm here kind of thing. It's a similar sort of thing. And in both of those scenarios, the person is being insecure. The person is clearly uncomfortable with the idea of their partner being with other people, right? And poly is something that a lot of people are in the process of figuring out. A lot of people open up their polyamory, in a marriage or a relationship. And it's really hard for some people to sort of have that, connection with a person who is actively communicating to you that they would like to be with other people. And so I know for a lot of people, there's like an agreement that some people have where it's like, well, you can only date these types of people, but not those types of people. But the thing is I get why you get there, but if you're going to be poly, if you're going to be, in relationships like this, you really do need to be able to accept that someone is likely going to meet someone that they really, really like, and they might want to maintain a relationship with. And if you're not comfortable with that, just don't do it. Don't do it. Like my partner, Victor was in a relationship. He was married to a cis woman. And while they were married, it was a similar thing where she was super uncomfortable with him dating any sort of cis woman, any sort of thing close to that. But totally okay with him being with men, being with trans people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So of course, what ended up happening is they were in a marriage for years, and she kept communicating to him that she was uncomfortable with this, she didn't like this, which I always think women should be able to communicate their feelings, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but she was actively trying to control his attractions. She was actively trying to say, yes, we're open, but you could never be in a relationship with anybody like me, right? So of course, what happened with that is he grew to resent her. He grew to resent the fact that he couldn't pursue relationships with cis women who he was interested in. And what happened the moment they broke up? He started pursuing cis women that he was interested in, right? And I just think that in a lot of situations like this, when you're trying to control another person's attractions, when you're trying to limit the sort of relationships that they can have, you're just setting yourself up for resentment, right? But here's the thing, guys. I try to say this in almost every video I make when I talk about cis women's insecurities and discomforts. If you're a cis woman who's uncomfortable with this stuff, be uncomfortable with it. Say that. I think what's frustrating for me is like watching people, be like, oh yeah, we're open. Oh yeah, we're poly. Oh yeah, everything's okay. But it's not. It's not. And I have unfortunately been the person time and time again who starts a relationship with a man who is given the okay go. And you fast forward, a month into our relationship and she's not comfortable. She's not comfortable with him being with me, him pursuing me, and then we have to break up. It's not fair to the other people that your partner is pursuing for you to pretend like you're totally okay with this when you're not. And if you're uncomfortable with it, it needs to be expressed. And when men are dating these women who they know are insecure or uncomfortable with them being with other people, they also need to be aware of that. Don't start relationships with people knowing that it might end because of your partner's insecurity. Where I'm at now is I don't even get into relationships with men like this. When I get the inkling that their partner is insecure about their polyamory, because I've been in so many situations where, it ends because the woman is insecure, I just don't pursue it. And so I kind of told this guy off and told him, it's weird that you are so adamant about, fighting against transphobia, in your profile, but then you're dating somebody who ultimately doesn't see trans women as material threats because of, some weird rule you made up in your head about the way that your partner feels about it, right? Like, to me, it's a conflict, it's a contradiction, which kind of goes to my whole thing about, I said earlier about these people just not, like these people being so performative. I don't understand how you could go in your profile and say no turfs, no swerves, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, but then date somebody who ultimately feels like trans women are not material threats to them. Like, that's insane to me. I don't understand how you could realistically make that argument. I don't understand how realistically you could say that you're a person who doesn't want to be around transphobia when you're dating someone who feels that way, you know? So that conversation ended, and of course he didn't take it well, and he said, well, my big beard and my big dick are gonna find someone, and there was a part of me that felt like, oh shit, maybe I let something go, because like I said, I do have a tendency to push people away, but at the same time, I needed to be honest with myself and acknowledge the fact that this made me uncomfortable. This man who's in a relationship with this woman who does not approve of him truly being in a relationship, it's not going to end well for me. He's only going to be able to give me so much. The relationship will always be limited, and I'm just not signing up for that, right? So I'm really curious how you guys feel about this, because obviously, like I said, I understand how people get there. I understand the thought process behind you can only date certain people and no one like me. Like I said, I've had similar feelings about my partners dating other trans people. Maybe we'll make a whole video about that. But I've landed on the fact that if we are truly polyamorous, if we are truly open, right? Those relationships are different, and feeling threatened by them and feeling like somebody's gonna, if a person can come into your relationship and take them away from you, you guys have relationship issues that you need to sort out. You know what I mean? Y'all have issues that you need to sort of sit and work through before you're even trying to include other people. And unfortunately, I have noticed that there's a lot of people who start in monogamous relationships that become open or polyamorous or whatever. And those relationships are just, they open them up to sort of save it. They open the relationship up in hopes that, they will meet somebody who will help enhance their relationship to a point of not breaking up. But what ends up happening is a slow, painful death. Instead of actually, it being this thing where, you've got the NRE and you go back and appreciate your relationship more, these people do find people that they connect with more, and they do end up leaving them. That happens a lot. And if you guys are already there, work on that before you start dating other people. I wish that sometimes people understood that when there's people like me who are solo poly, enter into these relationships that end up cutting off because of the craziness that happened in your relationship that we didn't entirely sign on for or were aware of. It's just a lot. It's just a lot. And like I said, I've been in that situation so many times. I've been broken up because of the insecure wife so many times. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. So anyway, I'm very curious what you guys have to say about this. I'm really curious how you feel about being comfortable with them dating basically any other gender with the exception of your own gender, how you feel about that, how you've processed that. Because I do think that it's something that you could really look at it both ways. You can look at it either way. I do have a hard time believing that a person could be confident in themselves and simultaneously uncomfortable with somebody dating someone that's just like them. If you guys are polyamorous. Now, if you guys are monogamous and that's the thing, get that, right? That's your agreement. I'm kind of tired of people opening up their relationships and being polyamorous when they're not really, because it's just not good for anybody, right? But anyway, let me know how you guys feel about that. Let me know what you guys think. Love your opinions. Always want your fresh brew of tea. Please leave it in the comment section below. Anyway, if you've made it through this entire video, please put this emoji in the comment section below. You guys know that the people who put the emojis are the cool kids. All of the cool kids are doing it, and I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you that you have to put the emoji in the comment section. I'm just saying that, I was talking to my friends the other day, and we had a suspicion that you were cool, but we didn't really believe it because you didn't put the emoji yet. So it's up to you if you want to hang out or whatever. We're all getting together after school, but I think we only want people who put the emoji in the comment section to hang out. So do with that what you will.